Hello, everybody, and welcome to GBH Amplifies. My name is Alberto Vasallo, and it is a pleasure to be here at the Newsfeed Cafe at the Boston Public Library. Wonderful studio audience. By the way, if you paid for it, you should have told me. I would have paid for it all, but it's too late now. It's too late now if you have coffee. Next time you come, it'll be on the house. It'll be on Todd, one of my guests. No. Anyways, this is our, weekly conversation that we have, amplifying different voices in the community. In the past, we've kind of said this is the kind of show that you hopefully will like. Hopefully, we'll learn and definitely laugh. I don't know if we're going to laugh too much today because we're going to take a little serious turn, although you never know. But the discussion today will center around the many unheard voices and so many real-life stories of many who have been detained by ICE here in Massachusetts. We've compiled a panel of what I call humble individuals who are experts, who have firsthand knowledge of these cases, of these people, who they are, what the circumstances around their arrest are, and how their lives have been impacted. These are the stories that you might just get a little soundbite in the news. You might get an article in the Globe, you might get a piece in GBH. But today, we're going to give these folks an unfiltered, unedited platform to talk about some of the specifics of this so that you out there get a much more fuller, richer context where we're talking about ICE and the lives it's affecting. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my, again, panel of experts. I'm going to go to my left. And you know what I'm going to do? I like doing this because I get tired of talking. I need you to look into that audience, tell me who you are and who you represent.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jillian Lenson. I'm a senior attorney at Lawyers for Civil Rights.
And what does Lawyers for Civil Rights do? Just for...
we enforce civil rights across the Commonwealth, including, as relevant to this conversation, immigrant rights.
Exactly. Okay, Attorney Todd.
Attorney Todd Pomelo in Boston, Ruben Pomelo PC. I chair Impact Litigation, and we represent any non-citizen basically getting raked over the coals by Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
And if you've been on top of the news, have you also seen the arrest at the Alston Car Wash, the workers at the Alston Car Wash? Those are your clients, correct?
Yes, all 9 of them. We did federal litigation, get them out of jail. We have 2 more we're fighting for right now. So far, 7 of them have been released from custody. And
we're going to get the details on that. And if there's any questions the audience has, this is the opportunity to do it because you probably won't have a panel of experts like this. And they can come from any kind of questions, right? At the press conference, I actually asked you about the criminal record of these 9, if there was or wasn't. We're going to get into that, give you an opportunity. Your turn, young lady.
Thank you so much. My name is Susan Church. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Legal Advisor to the State Office for Refugees and Immigrants. Our office is tasked with supporting and promoting the well-being of immigrants in the state, and we have been very busy this past 8 or 9 months, or 10 months. So.
Is your boss the governor?
My boss is Governor Maura Healey. I'm very proud to say. Okay,
so she had a letter she sent out earlier this week, which we're going to get into, and you can kind of talk to that about that letter, right?
Sure.
Okay. And to my right, a little sports. Scott Van Pelt from ESPN, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, no. He looks just like him. No. Jeff, you're not Scott Van Pelt. If you're an ESPN guy, he looks just like him. Right. Tell everybody who you really are.
I'm Jeff Thielman. I'm the president and CEO of the International Institute of New England. We work in eastern Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and we provide a range of services to immigrants and refugees in the region.
How long has your organization been working in this?
We've been around for 107 years. We were founded in Lowell at a YWCA, and founded here in Boston in 1924 at another YWCA, and we've been around for 107 years.
So just for context, in the 20s and 30s, and so, who were the immigrants that you guys were helping then?
Well, back then it was a lot of people from Europe, some people from Asia, but mostly people from Europe, and those people resented back then. And our institute was founded at a time of great anti-immigrant sentiment. 1918 was when we became more nationalistic. 1924 was when the Nationality Act was passed, which was extremely a bad law that limited people's ability to come into the country.
Irish?
The Irish we served as well. And they were certainly, they've done pretty well in this area.
But they've gone through this.
They've gone through the same thing that these folks are going through today.
We all know, we've all heard the story of the signs here in Boston and so forth before. So again, serving each wave of immigrants.
Correct.
This was the latest. Okay, I want to start off with 2 specific cases and then go into what the governor's reaction is and then just overall. But Todd, you've been in the news a lot. I saw the press conference with Ayanna Pressley. You represented these workers. Can you give the folks just an update on what is going on with the workers from the Alston car wash that were detained? There were 9 of them, correct?
Yes, so there are 9 people all illegally detained by ICE. 22 federal agents showed up, no warrants, grabbed them, refused to let any of them provide identification, their work permits, nothing. They're just basically grabbed summarily, put in vans, shackled and handcuffed, and shipped off to various detention facilities throughout New England. One of them even wound up in Texas.
All right. So again, for the audience, were most of these here folks who were here undocumented, illegally? What process? How many had criminal records? What's kind of the more specifics around the 9 individuals?
So all 9 of them were labeled criminal illegal aliens by the Trump administration. It's completely false. Not one of them has a criminal charge at all at any point in their lives. One of them 67 years old. The youngest was 19 years old. They all had different, they're from 4 different countries. They all had different immigration processes pending. Several of them had their work permits. One was merely waiting for his green card, and he had what's called deferred action, which was a promise that the government wouldn't do anything adverse to his interests. And they arrested him, handcuffed him behind his back, put him against a wall like he was in a firing squad.
So these are not the criminal undocumented that we have all been reading about, because there are stories in the paper when you see an undocumented who's got a bad record. These do not fall under that category, under your legal purview.
No, they don't. It's just propaganda. I see it time and time again. Every client I've had arrested recently, I had several cases. I had 5 in the national news, 2 in the international news recently, and they just falsely claim that people are criminal illegal aliens, or they'll say they're illegal aliens. And when you peel the onion back, it's not true. I'd say 90% of the time.
All right, remember, if you're in the audience and you have some specific questions, and I'll fire, and the panel too, right? I would love for you guys to ask him questions on these specifics and vice versa, because we could spend a whole, and we will spend a lot of time on these, on this particular case, because there are different statuses, and I want to get into where they are now,
Sure.
A little bit more specific. But before that, we have another attorney representing another case, and I want Jillian to get into the facts about this one happened in Chelsea. Okay, what happened?
Yeah, so we filed a Federal Tort Claims Act federal complaint on Monday on behalf of a family in Chelsea who was illegally targeted, assaulted by ICE. And I think this case really demonstrates the complete lawlessness with which ICE is targeting and enforcing their laws and really just attacking and terrorizing immigrant communities. Would be helpful to give some details about the case.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
This is a family who was driving in their car. It was a 50-year-old mother who has lived in Chelsea for over 20 years, is a lawful permanent resident in the car with her U.S. citizen son, a 13-year-old with a serious disability with autism spectrum disorder, accompanying a family member to a court hearing when their car was physically swarmed by 4 unmarked cars. Masked agents got out of the cars, didn't identify themselves, swarmed the vehicle, smashed the windows before giving the family a chance to cooperate or provide any identification. Ultimately pulled both the mother and reached into the car, unlocked the doors, pulled both the mother and her son out of the car, and then went on to violently arrest. Again, this is a lawful resident, 50-year-old mother with pre-existing medical conditions, violently arrest her, smash her up against a fence, kick her. An agent actually kicked her to force her onto the ground, smashed her face against the ground, violently handcuffed her in front of her daughter. Ultimately came to the scene when she heard that her family had been stopped, in front of her children who are weeping and crying and terrified. And they actually tried to force her into one of the cars. Who knows what would have happened to her. But luckily, local police, someone called 911, and local police intervened and asked them to check her identification. And this is all while her community members were yelling, she is here legally, check her ID, and ICE was just willfully ignoring this information and continuing to victimize this woman and this family.
All right, before I go to the state and what our governor has been talking about with regards to this, Jeff, you work with an institute that works with immigrants, right?
Right.
When you hear this, is these some of the cases, worries, and kind of the reality that many immigrants are living today here in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I mean, so what people are facing is constant fear. I mean, just the story that the two attorneys described are just one or two of many situations across the state where people have seen ICE arrests or they've been detained, sometimes briefly, but they've been detained, and that is a very scary thing. What it's created is fear among the entire immigrant community. People are afraid to go to work. They're afraid to go out. They're afraid to come to our office for English classes. They're afraid to go to the doctor for appointments that they need to attend to. They're afraid to have their children go to school. So if you're living in fear, you're not in a good place to work and contribute to our state. And some of the folks are leaving. Some of the folks have said, I've had it. It's enough. I don't need this pressure. I don't want to live in this country. And unfortunately, that is what the president wants to do. He wants to get people to leave the country. He wants to make it unwelcoming and unfriendly to immigrants, and he's having some success. Organizations like ours are saying, wait a minute, stay in this country. You're not alone. We're with you. But that is a hard sell when you're in their shoes.
Okay, but can we clarify something? Because I think when you say immigrant, there are different status, right? There are some that are undocumented, some of them who are, as you will point out, in process, and some who are immigrants and they have residency or a green card. Tell me a little bit about that.
Some people have they have a green card. They're usually in a good position. Some people have been admitted lawfully to the United States. People that Susan and I work with closely, people from Haiti, Haitian humanitarian parolees that were lawfully admitted, now have lost their status, have received support from our state, from volunteers, donors. They have been put in our job placement programs, our English classes, and now they can't work. They've lost their status. They are living in fear all up and down eastern Massachusetts and throughout our state. That is a problem.
Venezuelans as well, right?
Venezuelans as well, yeah.
Yep. Okay, Susan.
Can I add a little
Yes.
to that? Because I feel like that's one of the most important pieces that people are missing. So even during Trump 1.0, if somebody had an asylum application pending, if they had work authorization, what that means is that they are lawfully present, pursuing lawful pathways that are authorized by every law in the state, right? Not even during the first Trump did they ever arrest people in that situation. I had one single asylum seeker arrested in the entire 4 years, and there were some serious issues. So what people need to understand is this is not an attack on undocumented people. This is not an attack on criminal immigrants. This is an attack on immigrants 100%. The vast majorities of people we see have entered legally with parole, have work authorization, and are pursuing lawful pathways. They're in court, for goodness sakes. People were in the immigration court following their immigration court rights and answering their immigration court call to court, and they were arrested in the courthouse. The plan is to scare and intimidate people into leaving and to prevent anyone from pursuing a lawful pathway that Congress and hundreds of years of history has authorized them to follow. And an international treaty. The asylum law is an international treaty, and we are ignoring that by this attack.
And to pick up on Susan's point, we are seeing the ICE and the federal government ignore due process.
Yeah.
And when they ignore due process for one of us, one resident of the Commonwealth, they're going to start to ignore due process for a lot of us. So we should be very concerned. We should be keeping an eye on this trend because it is a dangerous one for our entire regime of constitutional law in this country.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, due process for some is due process for none. I've been saying that for months, and what we're seeing time and time again, it's really just an assault on the rule of law, on our democracy. I mean, I have a case right now with an illegally deported Babson College student. She's a dreamer, full ride at Babson. And I have a court order issued 10 minutes after suing on a Friday night, and they completely ignored it, deported her from the country, and I thought you might get an apology. And instead they're saying, no, Judge, we did it anyway because we didn't think you had the authority to tell us not to. It's just brazen lawlessness. If I do that, if she does that, if Susan does that, we lose our law licenses. And this is a representative from the Department of Justice. It used to be an esteemed position to work at DOJ, and they're doubling down now on this, what it really is it's a terror icing of society. That's what we refer to it as. It's a terror ice. That's
exactly
dealing with that regularly, and they're going after immigration attorneys. They're going after criminal defense attorneys. It goes on and on and on. They're going after hospitals, schools, science. It's not just about non-citizens. Non-citizens are the easiest target because they can't vote, usually.
Yeah.
And once you get rid of that block of people, what are they going to do with all those resources? It's called Department of Homeland Security. It's not called, Department of immigration is one component of it, but I just see it, I think it's going to happen with the elections, polling places. We're going to see just this level of lawlessness, and it's not going to stop. But it takes lawyers and it takes voters to really evoke change.
And if there's any question of this being an attack on all immigrants, not undocumented immigrants, just look at what they're doing with citizenship. They literally pulled people out of line. And when you think, well, they went through the background check for citizenship, no. They have gone through a background check when they entered with a visa. Then they go through a background check when they first apply for work authorization. Then they go through a background check when their green card happens. Then they go through a preliminary background check before they're even scheduled for a citizenship interview. Many immigrants then go through a background check after the citizenship interview, and that's the person they pull out of line at a citizenship interview. So hopefully we've made that point.
You were talking during your organization, the press conference. So you're also looking at certain tort laws and so forth. Some of the legal resources or recourse that some of these folks may have.
Yeah, just taking a step back, I just want to emphasize how illegally and lawlessly ICE is behaving. They are ignoring individuals' constitutional rights. They are ignoring federal statute for immigration enforcement they're supposed to be following. They are ignoring their own standards of conduct, which govern how much force they can use, the fact that they need to provide identification, how and when they can arrest folks. They are ignoring all of that, and they are doing so recklessly that, again, it doesn't matter what your citizenship status is. If you look like someone or are with someone or are in the wrong place at the wrong time, they are acting as if they have completely a blank check for authority to do the work, and that is because the path to recourse is very narrow, unfortunately. So our complaint was filed under the Federal Tort Claims Act, which is one of the only pathways that folks who have been victimized by ICE have to seek recourse against the agents who harmed them. And that requires filing first a federal complaint against ICE, with ICE and with the Department of Homeland Security, and giving the department 6 months to respond. And then from there, you can then file a federal lawsuit, basically for the illegal conduct which led to illegal tortious acts. But it's only those tortious acts which you can seek relief for. And again, the pathway is very narrow, and there's no other check on ICE's behavior right now, which is really just despicable.
Todd, we wanted to talk a little bit about the specifics of some of the Alston car wash workers, because I heard in the press conference, the 67-year-old man who said that he still, at least at the press conference, his work papers hadn't been even returned to him, right? So now he's got, and again, back to these real life consequences. He can't work because you haven't given them that. He's here, but he can. Aside from the fact that he was detained, his life has been impacted in a significant way, and I think sometimes maybe our audience isn't feeling that. They don't see it on a daily basis.
No,
they're not feeling that.
Yeah, that's Dario. And then just in talking him, you sharing his story. He said they were treated like dogs at Burlington, but respectfully, people treat their dogs a hell of a lot better than this. I mean, they're sleeping on floors in Burlington. They're throwing crackers at them. One of the people from the car wash is diabetic. They're feeding her donuts for 8 days. Her blood sugar hit 650 when she went to Vermont. I had a client taken to Vermont recently. They didn't think she spoke English, and when she walked in, somebody hung up the phone and said, "More business is coming in. I got to hang up."
Wow.
And what ends up happening, you're on a GPS monitor, another for-profit contractor, and nearly every client from New England, when they're arrested, within a matter of days, they wind up in Texas or Louisiana in a for-profit hellhole. And it's not coincidence.
The governor this week sent out a letter to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary, Noemi. What was in that letter, and why is that important?
So it's exactly for the reason Attorney Pomerleau just mentioned. Right now, what ICE is doing is essentially removing immigrants who have lived in Massachusetts 5, 10, 15, 20 years within sometimes 5 to 6 hours of their arrest. So they get arrested in the morning, they go to Burlington. They are very often not even allowed a phone call. So families spend days looking for their family members, and then they are flown out of Hanscom Air Force Base to Louisiana, to Texas, and to upstate New York. This is by design, and the purpose is to obstruct due process and to halt people's access to attorneys, to family, to their resources here. Particularly in upstate New York, for example. When our office started receiving calls, everybody's going to New York. What, upstate New York, Batavia? I've never heard of a detention facility in Batavia. We had no lawyers up there. And so all of these people had lawyers here, have been now moved to Batavia. Now they don't have access to an attorney. They also lose access to our federal court system. Right now, our federal court system has every single federal judge that has looked at the issue of mandatory detention, the way this administration is interpreting it, has said they're violating the law. Everyone, including George Bush appointees, including very conservative judges. So what do? They fly people out of state, so they don't have access to judges who have all ruled against them already. And so the governor, very rightly so, called for an immediate stop to using handscom. ICE is using private jets. Just statistically, they did 112 flights in a year versus, in the past year, versus 269 in all of the past 10 years. So it is an extraordinary amount of effort on their part to get people out of the state, and it is 100%, there's a direct line to the violation of due process and the interference with the right to representation. And so the governor called for a stop.
And I've had several clients in the Batavia facility, and Batavia is considered a staging facility. So I've had clients there for 6 or 7 days before they were flown to Texas or Louisiana, and they said, I was told I can't even call a lawyer because I'm in a staging facility. This is like a temporary place to go. So it got to the point where I'm actually sworn in Buffalo. So I'm doing habeases in Buffalo now, because if you don't move quick enough, they go to the military bases, and then you wind up so it seems like all the men are on a loop, but they go to Buffalo, Texas or Louisiana. The women go to Vermont, Texas or Louisiana. So if you don't sue within hours, I mean, a day is a long time. That's what happened with the Alston cases is, I think it was like Tuesday night around 8:50, and I was reading an article on Boston.com, and the article is like the arrests happened at like 10 o'clock in the morning. So I instantly thought they were gone, because I've been doing a lot of these cases. Susan helped create the beautiful habeas project. We'll give her a trophy for that. But I've been mentoring an informal group of lawyers for, 6-7 months now. We have about 300 lawyers that have been mobilized to file these habeases quickly. And I'm one of 7 or 8 of us that mentor the whole group of lawyers. So I just knew, like, 8 o'clock at night, the odds are they're going to be gone. So we volunteered to start filing these. We did 4 at Tuesday night, and within a half hour of filing them, we have court orders stopping their, at a minimum, their deportation from the country without due process, and also the transfer of the body out of the jurisdiction. So that's very important to sue right away. We didn't have all the names of the people. It was so chaotic. We actually had filed 10 of these because we were told somebody was detained who actually wasn't even detained. Just people didn't even know. They just showed up and arrested everybody and shipped them off for several days. They weren't in the ICE locator. We were calling repeatedly to ICE, sending emails. They don't respond to phone calls anymore. They used to have their own private number we could call as lawyers, and they would answer their phone, and you could talk to somebody there. And you could say, look, I was just hired. I'm trying to talk to my client. We're asserting their rights. Now they just completely ignore you. They ignore the emails. Like Ani Belosa, for example, we got the case very late on Thursday night, didn't know enough information. I thought she was detained originally at the airport, coming in as like an F1 student. But
I'm sorry, just for context, that's the Babson
student.
Babson
Yes. Ani
student.
Belosa,
You might have read about. She's a dreamer, and she was going to visit her family, surprise her family in Texas. She was studying here in Massachusetts, and she got deported very quickly.
yeah, in about 2.5 days. It was extremely fast because she traveled with her real ID, her Honduran passport. That's a trap, because we have now learned that TSA is basically ratting everybody out who travels. Doesn't matter if it's domestic or international. They're all working in cahoots.
Oh.
So they took her passport and shipped her to Honduras. Used to be you had to deal with consular officers in foreign countries to transfer a person out of country on a deportation, but not now. Trump threatened a lot of these countries, so now they're just accepting people with a travel document.
So these are some of, like I said, we're getting some of the details that maybe you don't ordinarily get in the sound bites and so forth, and it's important. So I want to kind of go back to that case in Chelsea. For those who, any other details that you think is pertinent and folks should know about?
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about how this is not just a couple of rogue ICE officers behaving recklessly. This is really top-down patterns of illegality we're seeing repeatedly in the same communities. We had another case that we filed, an FTCA complaint in Chelsea, where the exact same pattern of illegal behavior, unmarked cars swarming a vehicle, smashing windows without question, dragging people from the car, was employed against another family. It's the same tactics that are consistently being sanctioned top down, even though they're very clearly illegal. They very clearly violate folks' most sacred constitutional rights, and they traumatize and hurt real long-standing community members. I mean, this is such a small example, but our client's car, because her windows were smashed, sat unusable in her driveway for over a month. They were responsible for the bill. They didn't have the money to fix their car, so they had to save up money before they could drive their car again. And they had all these follow-up medical appointments from the incident. They're now paying for taxis. They're not able to get anywhere. And that's because ICE just smashed their windows without even asking any questions. And now they have to foot the bill. I mean, how is this fair? How is this justice?
And again, this is a resident.
She has been in Chelsea for 20 years, has 2 U.S. citizen children, big part of her community, in the heart of her community, in front of her neighbors who are also traumatized, advocating for her, telling officers she's a citizen, and they just, willfully choose to ignore.
And it shouldn't even matter anyway what the status is. Imagine if ICE just walked in right now and walked up to every one of you and said, show me your papers.
Right.
No, I'll show you the Fifth Amendment. You have a right to remain
Right.
silent. Don't talk
Right.
to them. You don't have to.
No questions asked.
Nobody's business who you are. And that's where it's heading. And people that are citizens are being asked to prove they're citizens. And they're like, I'm a citizen. I mean, they don't even need to answer the question, and they're being taken away to these detention facilities too.
And it's in front of children. I mean, her kids were right there. This is like a 50-year-old mother. She's not a threat to anyone, and her kids are crying. I mean, it's inhumane. It's really treating people like they're somehow less than, and it really should scare all of us, because to Todd's point, where does it end, right? Like, you can draw a line now saying maybe this won't affect me, but it's getting closer and closer to all of us, and regardless of how close it gets to us, we should all care, because these are our neighbors, these are our community members, and fundamentally they are people who have rights that need to be respected.
Let's again put in perspective. Then I'm going to go to Jeff, because you and I were talking about how do you explain it to non-Latinos, right? Like some of the economic effects it has.
Yeah.
But before that, Susan, give us, because I know the governor used some statistics, right? Of how many are really criminals, how many are not, how many are criminals. What are some of the statistics that Governor Maura Healey had in that letter to U.S. To Homeland Security?
So what the letter said is that a substantial majority of individuals who are removed through these flights are not, do not have any criminal record. The New York Times reported that that number is 63% in Massachusetts, but I suspect that number is much higher. And the reason I suspect that is, for example, it's not clear what a criminal record is, right? You could have what's called a dismissed charge, meaning maybe you got arrested, wrongful ID, they dismiss the charge. That could be considered criminal. They don't define how they define criminal. They could be saying anyone who entered over the border without permission is a misdemeanor offense of entering over the border. So although they say 63%, I'm guessing that's a much higher number of people who have zero contact with the criminal justice system.
Before I go, Jeff, you mentioned at the press conference, right? You've never seen this in 20 years, how far back they're going, and for such small infractions of the law,
Right.
or incidents that may have been dismissed, as Susan
Yeah, I'll
said.
give you an example. So I had two cases that were publicized in the last handful of months. We had Jamie Rosa and Ava Mendez. So Jamie came here at 8 years old from Peru with her green card. Ava, the same thing, from Cape Verde. So they had green cards for 40 years, nearly. So they each took a trip out of the country. One was a vacation, one was to go to a funeral. So Jamie went to Cancun for a family reunion. There's about 20 of them. Her husband worked for DHS for 11 years. And when she was 20, she had a small bag of marijuana. She got probation for it. It was a finable offense given her record at the time. Her record was sealed under state law, but more importantly, about 2 years ago, Governor Healey had a blanket pardon. She did a press conference and she pardoned all people with these marijuana offense convictions. Yep. So she was pardoned, and regardless of what you think about pardons, only a president can pardon, for example, capital defendants, and only a governor can pardon people for state criminal offenses. So she was fully pardoned. She renewed her green card a month before her trip. Ava Mendez had to get a stamp in her passport to travel. She hadn't left the country to Cape Verde since she was a child. She went there because her brother died unexpectedly. And what happened to each of them, Jamie was held for 5 days at Logan Airport. no access to an attorney. We went over there, literally had 3 lawyers go over, we're on video, and they're saying she doesn't have a right to counsel, trust us, she's here. We never talked to her once on the phone. We learned a couple weeks later after we busted her out that she was literally handcuffed to a bed one time. They almost killed her. Her husband kept calling to try to get her medication, and at one point they laughed at him and said, look, you're next to kin, we'll let you know if she dies. So that was what happened to her, and I thought that was absolutely outrageous. And I went to the Roxbury court, got the conviction vacated, that it shouldn't even have been necessary, it was pardoned. The district attorney said it's not even a crime anymore, and then doubled down and said this wasn't even a provable crime then because there was no quantity of marijuana even put in the police reports. And I had to basically guess for 2 weeks why she was held. She was never served once with a notice to appear, which is effectively the charging document to be in immigration court. So she was held she was held, I think, 13 total days, never charged with anything. But we filed a prompt habeas corpus for her that kept her in the region. With Ava, same thing. We had to file a habeas corpus. I got a message on my answering service like 6 days after she was detained. I didn't think she'd still be at the airport, and I thought she'd be long gone. She was held for 13 days at Logan with no charges at all, and now she's in Maine. She's had a case pending for about a month. So she had a no contest plea from 2007 for shoplifting. That's it. And she's still sitting in a jail cell right now. So, and these are charges that in each circumstance, neither criminal defense lawyer ever told them there'd be any immigration consequences. They occurred a long time ago when most defense lawyers weren't giving immigration advice unless they were Susan Church or my partner, Jeff Rubin. I wasn't even doing it, and I was trained by the Committee for Public Counsel back in 2005. It wasn't commonplace a long time ago to give immigration advice depending on which region of the country you were practicing law in. So a lot of these old convictions are haunting people, and they didn't even know it was a problem. Like Jamie Rosa traveled multiple times out of the country, no issues. Ava, a year ago, her boss bought her a trip, she went to like Bermuda, she did Bahamas, like the Kokomo. She went all around to the different islands, came in no problem at all. And then she goes to bury her brother and see her mom for the first time in 40 years, and she's been in detention now for over a month over basically a no contest charge to shoplifting, probably a $10 item.
Again, we are giving these folks on the panel the opportunity to kind of inform you in richer detail. Many of you have never heard some of these background details of what's happening. So I appreciate the detail today. Jeff, you and I were talking the other day when you were on the morning show.
Yep.
What do you tell folks who say, but they came into this country illegally, they should have known better, doesn't affect me, some of these are criminal, I don't care. What do you say to some of your friends who are, your friends?
Yeah, my friends. I say to them, look, first of all, it matters sometimes how they came into the country, but what really matters is that they're here now contributing to our communities. And I try to remind people that I know and people in different communities across the region that we need immigrants and refugees in our economy to grow it. So if you look at, if you go across the river, go to Cambridge or now in Boston too, and you look at the entire biotech industry, it is built by people who were born outside of the United States. They came as students in many cases, they stayed here, they built companies that our friends and families work in. We have, in our organization, we place people, including some of the humanitarian parolees that Susan and I work with from Haiti, in entry-level jobs all over this region, back of the house. They're the ones cutting your food up at the different restaurants. They're the ones working in hotels. They're the ones working in entry-level jobs, and they're trying to advance. We've placed some people with strong English skills from different countries who are on the banned country list right now in biotech jobs. And some of those folks are going to be re-interviewed or threatened to be re-interviewed because they're from one of the countries that Trump has banned, including Afghanistan. So what this is doing to our economy, it is pushing people out of our economy that we need in order to grow it. Our growth in this entire region, 29% of this city, Boston, is foreign-born. 80% of our population growth over the past 40 years in New England has happened because of new people coming in who are born outside of the United States. Once you lose that flow of people, you start to lose your economy. We may not feel it right now, but we're going to feel it pretty soon. And I say to my friends and other people, we're going to start to feel this. You're going to start to not have a need. You're not going to have enough people to kind of do some of the things you need around your house. You're not going to have enough workers in our entire economy. And I also say to them, Why don't we have a conversation about legal immigration? Why don't we just, instead of letting the president, any president, issue executive orders, why don't we have a conversation about laws that can be passed by Congress that can set fair rules for immigration and that can increase the number of immigrants who can come into the United States? Why not talk about reform? I had a conversation one time with Adam Schiff when I was in different meetings in my job. He was in Congress, and now he's a senator from California. And I asked him, I said, why can't you guys get immigration reform done? After we talked about the Red Sox, he's from Framingham.
Yep.
And so he said to me, the President of the United States has to be willing to expend political capital, which I don't know if I took that, I don't know how to take that response. But we should be having our people in Congress and the President getting immigration reform so that we're not having this kind of crazy situations happen. This is, again, everything that's been described by our friends here on this panel is illegal, it's unconstitutional, it's un-American, and it's not good for our economy, ultimately, because it's going to cause good people to leave and not stay, and that will not grow this economy. We're going to start to feel it. We're feeling it now. We're going to feel it more severely in a few years, because the decisions we make about immigration today will impact the economic vitality of everybody in this room, everybody listening, for decades to come.
What do you say to that? You agree?
No, I think that's absolutely right. Like nursing homes, hospitals. I mean, just the areas, if you really imagine this state without immigrants, you don't have a state. The entire city of Chelsea was a shell of a city until 20 years ago. Immigrants moved into that city, rehabbed the housing. It is a beautiful, vibrant place to be now because immigrants moved in and adopted that city as their own. And they've done that all over this state. They are 20% of our population. And without them, we don't work. We simply don't work. And Trump knows that. Trump knows that the blue states rely on have a larger percentage of immigrants than many of the, Wyoming and Idaho and places like that. It's no hit to them, but it is a serious hit to our state. And people need to speak up to the federal government and be, the president is responsive sometimes when he hears enough of a complaint. And there have been times, as evidenced by his speech last night on the economy, that he does, maybe I'm making a mistake, right? And so people need to speak up. I think if you're not going to stand up for immigrants now, today, if you're not going to stand up for humanity today, when are you going to do it, right? This is the time. We are at ground zero with the attack on immigrants.
One other point is that, Massachusetts, we have power in Massachusetts. We're a blue state, but there's, people of all sorts of different persuasions here. But we're also a state that sends more money to the federal government than we get back in benefits. And so we have some leverage here to say, look, you can't act like this. You can't violate our laws. You can't hurt our people because we're giving you more money than you're giving us. So we have some leverage. We have some leverage in Massachusetts. I think the governor's using it wisely, and we have to keep looking for ways to use it wisely.
All right, we've got about 7 minutes left, and I'd like to put you guys not on the spot, but see how this ages. Where do you see this in the next 3 years? Because we're talking about now, it's very intense right now. There's elections in 2028. Where do you see this going? Is there a moment? Is there a peak, and then things get better? Is it going to continue to get worse? When does the federal government realize the economic factor and say, wow, this isn't such a great idea? Does that happen? Kind of when you're asked by a family member to say, well, what do you think this is all going to? How do you answer that?
It's going to court. Time and time again, we're going to be suing them and just hammering them with lawsuits. That's where I see it heading for the next 3 to 5 years. There needs to be, equipoise what's going on. You can't just keep violating rights wholesale, literally on videotape. They don't even care if you record them. They're like, don't F with us, we're ICE. It's like, all right.
That's what I think. When the money, when there's suits, lawsuits, and then our tax-paying dollars are going to kind of remedy these.
Yeah, that's where it's going. And it's like mobilization efforts. Like one thing that is, like when Jamie Rosa had that horrible thing happen, or the first time she ever spoke publicly, she's like, look, the charge is gone. I have my green card. I'm applying to be a citizen. I want to be a voice for the voiceless. It inspired us. Actually, I co-founded a nonprofit legal clinic called Mass Deportation Defense. And the idea, I actually got it a week after the election. I was like, what's the antithesis to mass deportation now? And it kind of hit me driving home from an AILA conference where we thought we'd be celebrating the first woman president and having immigration reform. And people were like crying in their soup. And I listened, my buddy Ron Abramson was there giving a speech, and he's like, the time is now. This is going to be difficult. We need to stand up. We need to fight back. We can't cower. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of sleepless nights. And I was just sitting in the front row nodding my head like, let's, like Tom Brady, like, let's effing go. Let's do this. And then I drove home and I had this idea. What's the opposite of that? And that's what it is. And, so we've worked on founding a nonprofit. We're trying to help people because, like, for example, the people in the car wash, that was a volunteer effort. It's draining on law firms to do pro bono. People are always like, can you do my case pro bono? They don't realize you're paying out of your pocket for your staff, for all of your bills. It's very difficult to do. But now Massachusetts has some grant funding, which has been great. The Mass Access to Counsel initiative, I think that'll hopefully continue, moving forward. Like other states have been doing this for years. Massachusetts, for some reason, hasn't really funded many of these legal issues. We're really at the forefront of this. I mean, this is where we fought a revolution 250 years ago, and we're fighting a similar one now. It's really about our democracy, and it's just about our fundamental freedoms. It's about so much more than non-citizens' rights, in my view, and I think we just have an opportunity to speak out, to be proud of who we are, and just to stand up for somebody else. Like, I was born here. Why do I care so much about it? I took an oath to the Constitution. My grandfather fought Nazis at 17 years old in London and took a bullet for this country. He's a Purple Heart veteran. His grandson's fighting Nazis in the United States now 80 years later. It's unbelievable.
You're also working on policy, right?
Well, first, I just want to hit on Todd and Susan's point that we have to be outraged and we have to fight back. This is our own government is ignoring the rule of law, and regardless of where you live or where you come from, if you're in this country, you should care about that. We have to fight back to prevent that from happening because the consequences of that are extremely dire. And so, that's why at Lawyers for Civil Rights, we're bringing these cases to try and provide some accountability for this lawless behavior and for the absolute failure to follow, let alone care about the rule of law. And so I think we have to push that, and everybody has to use whatever platform they have to speak out so that we can minimize the damage over the next 3 years.
I mean, the one thing that we're saying to our clients, we served last year 12,800 human beings who were enrolled in our services. The year before that, about 24,000. And so what we are saying to our folks is, there are more of you and there are more of us who believe in you than there are of them. And so we're actually saying, look, you hang in there, wait it out, do everything you possibly can. You're resilient people who fought like hell to get here, and you got to call on that part of your character to stay here, and we're behind you all the way, and we will eventually win. So I'm trying to be optimistic with the people that we work with every day on a real level. We will eventually overcome all this nonsense because poll after poll shows that the majority of the American people don't like what's happening with ICE. They don't like pushing immigrants out of the country. The majority of the American people remember that they're from an immigrant heritage as well. And eventually, we're going to win.
Okay. Susan, you have the last word.
I agree. I believe in pendulum swings, and I believe we're coming back on the pendulum swing. If you'll recall, during family separation last time, that unbelievable policy, they caved. And why did they cave? Yes, there was a lawsuit, and that helped, but there was a massive public outcry, massive about that. That was too far for many people. This is now that same spot in the Trump administration. We are at a crossroads now. We are arresting women whose husbands had 10 days to die of cancer recently, a case in our office. Autistic children have been arrested. 13-year-olds have been deported. Now is the time to push the pendulum back, and I think that's the path we're on.
Okay, with that, we did what we said we were going to do. Give you guys ample time to kind of get this oftentimes not talked about, at least in depth. We read about it, so I want to thank you guys for taking the time out. I know you're all very, very busy, so I want Sandra to know that this panel this is a great panel right here. This is not easy to get these guys to take time of their day, so I want an applause for them for coming by. I hope the audience got something out of it. You learned something. Like I always say, I hope you learned, you liked. We didn't have too much. The only laugh we had was at your expense. Right? He looks like Scott Van Pelt from ESPN. If you watch sports, there's a TV anchor called Scott Van Pelt, and you look a little like him.
We were separated at birth, Scott.
Yeah, separated at birth. All right. With that, I want to thank everybody for coming here. Thank the GBH crew behind, in front, and at the studio. So until next time, Alberto Vasallo for GBH Amplifies. Have a great rest of the week.